Hi guys, it's GM the Life Coach. Apologies for taking a while to get the content out to you. It's been a while, I know. But I've been on my summer holidays, started my summer holidays, and I've done some good stuff. Went to the beach and Sandy Beach, may I add, not to Pebble Beach. Yeah, I got talked into it. Went to a little barbecue. Then went to Kiss Story. So I've had some good fun. Yeah. So I just like to say thank you to those people who have been on the show so far, the people who have contributed to the show, and people who are waiting to get their journeys done. I want to thank everybody who's participated in this show so far. So things are only going to get better, and there's some great content coming. And remember, you can get involved in the show and have your say by emailing the show at gmthelifecoach336@gmail.com. Say it with me. That's gmthelifecoach336@gmail.com. All right, there's no excuse to say it even slower, yeah? Anyway, in today's episode, we will be hearing from a friend of mine called Luke, and we'll be talking about mental health together. As you guys know, the topic of mental health is the reason why this podcast even exists. And if you know or understand the peeps on this show, then you will know that good mental health is a must, that we must protect ourselves and our children's mental health. That means being open and honest. And if you aren't feeling your normal self, then talk to someone. Remember that most people don't feel their normal regularly anyway. They muddle through until the problem and situation becomes worse. Remember, how we feel on the inside often ends up showing on the outside. At least eventually anyway. It's important to talk about how you feel. Okay? It's very important to talk about how you feel. And I'll say it again. I have to say this again to stress it. It's important to talk about how you feel. A lot of people feel certain feelings and they don't want to talk to anyone about it. Okay? They feel like what they're feeling isn't important enough, or it's insignificant. And it could be as simple as you just feeling down that day. It's good to just talk to somebody. But if you have a friend or family member who you suspect is having a tough time, then try and strike up a convo. And inquire how they feel. Don't be too pushy, and if they reject you, don't get angry. It's very important. Just let them know you're there to support them and that they can talk to you at any time. If you hear things that you feel worry you or, might scare you, then at another time, maybe suggest getting help from a professional. Again, don't be too pushy though, and if they reject, then again, let them know you're here for them, and anytime they want to talk, they can come to you. Anyway, just thought I'd give some suggestions. And remember, if you would like to talk to someone, then you can talk to me at GM the Life Coach. You know the email right now, but I'll say it again. GM the Life Coach 336@gmail.com. All right, you should be able to say this backwards. Well, okay, maybe not backwards. Anyway, back to the podcast with Luke, who'll be back on the show with his own My Journey episode. But for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy as we talk mental health. GM the Life Coach. How you doing? It's GM the Life Coach. I'm here again with my boy Luke. Yeah, we've just done a nice journey podcast. It was really, really good, quite exciting. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what we touched on at the end of that podcast. It's about mental health. One of you suffered from or felt you had mental health issues, problems, or whatever you want to call it, episodes. When did it start? When did you get your first one? Can you remember anything?
I think it's a quite a difficult thing to kind of formally identify. Because I think sometimes, we can all feel a little down, I suppose. I think I'm a big advocate of actually being proactive with these things and not getting yourself into a hole and actually talking to people. And I think there should be no, especially as young black men or just as black men in general, I think we're almost more susceptible to it. So I think, so I always, if I speak to one of my friends and they're like, I'm going through this, or, I've been thinking about counselling, I'm always for that, because what is the worst that can happen? Mm-hmm. Exactly. You're being proactive about your own mental health. Yeah. I mean, and like other forms of health, mental health is as well. If you've got to take care of yourself. For me, I think it's easy. I suppose my point is that we can all feel a little down, but I think it's not until you can kind of identify these behaviours and work out what is actually going on to you can, is when you can kind of do something about it. Mm-hmm. So I've got a friend who has been going through it and is without saying too much, had to commit suicide and he's been depressed and that kind of thing. And it's like for years, these certain behaviours he's been doing, you know what I mean? And it's just like really insular and into his own space and just becoming quite down and stuff. And it wasn't until I, was more proactive about my own mental health that like I realised that actually there are certain things that you're doing that can contribute to that. And it's not until you have the knowledge to identify these behaviours and say, well, actually, maybe that's not a healthy paradigm and that's not a healthy way of doing things. So for me, like, generally I would say that I've not had massive, well, I mean, here and there, you know what I mean? I think I'm not a massively, we all get down in it. Like I would kind of retreat into my own space. Like I love my own space, as you can see in here. I got all the things, and you know what I mean. So that's how I would kind of handle it. I'd kind of retreat a little bit. I used to call them, when I was younger, I'd call them periods of indifference, where I just didn't really give a shit and just kind of retreated back into my own kind of world a little bit. And I suppose for me, it's always kind of stemmed around work and what is going to come next, and am I going to have money and all them kind of things there. You know what I mean? So. But outside of that, I would say I've been fairly balanced. You know what I mean? Like I'm not a massively anxious person. Life is in troughs, and it goes up and down in it. So I won't pretend I've never felt down before. You know what I mean? And I think there's nothing wrong with it. I think there's only something wrong with it when you're not willing to talk about it or be proactive about it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think, and that kind of, I've got a friendship group that we are all so transparent about these things, and and about how it makes us feel. That's and stuff. Yeah, it is. And like when we met, like I was 22, 23 them times, and like I don't think that would have been on the agenda as much, because I think just by virtue of life, innit, you just you have that bit of experience and you work out these things, innit. Like you can. We've all lived through enough summers, innit? You know what happens, and summer's this supposed time of your life and all them kind of things there. But I think seasonal depression is a real thing. Yeah, you know what I mean? And I think, I can't think of when the first time was. I can't think of when the first time was. Maybe in my teens. I think maybe when like I first got Crohn's disease. And I was like identified with that because I was like, oh, woe is me kind of thing, why me? And it just kind of really, it changed my life, you know what I mean? It changed everything. So it was like, oh shit, I don't really know how to process this, and you know what I mean? But
because a lot of the time, the difficulty is, and you don't always know when your first time is, but you know how you felt. Do you get what I'm saying? But sometimes you might confuse it with other things. What things do you think, as growing up, as an older guy, do you think kind of will put you in that sort of space where you get insular? Do you think?
It's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. I think that was just the way growing up, the way I handled things. You know what I mean? Like I was very. I like my own space, as a lot of men do. And in lieu of what is going on, this was definitely more behaviour when I was younger. As I've gotten older, I've kind of learned that that's not necessarily the best way to handle things. You know what I mean? Just put your head in the sand and retreat and go in my space. Because if you bury your head in the sand, it don't mean that things stop happening on the outside. You know what I mean? It just means things still are going on, but you just got your head in the sand. That's what that means. So I suppose it's a bit of a defense mechanism. I think maybe when things are getting stressful, getting a bit on top. I think that was my way of kind of dealing with it, because everything you can control. Because that's what I've learned as I've got a bit older. Is lack of control makes me feel uneasy. Right. You know what I mean? And I think that is where any difficulties that I have had have stemmed from. So lack of control in work. You know what I mean? You can be as proactive as you want, and you can do the right things, but sometimes just by virtue of being a freelancer, you don't always have control over where things are. That's part and parcel of it comes with the territory. It comes with the territory, and you've got to be able to navigate that. And I think, that's what I've learned. So certainly in the last 18 months is control, not having control over things in my life. Not that I'm a control freak, but just if you feel like things are happening, you don't really have say over them necessarily. I think that's where it would stem from. Yeah.
Yeah. What is good mental health to you?
Everything, because it informs everything else. It's so important. Like I can't, and it's only something that like I've really kind of learned in the last 5 years or so, last 4 years. I've learned. It's funny. Like I was an impetuous young man. Boisterous and just and short-tempered, and I'm still some of those things. I'm a work in progress. But like
as you are.
Yeah, but I think mental health is pivotal, is essential, is key, is number one thing that informs everything else. Because if you feel like shit, you're not going to take care of yourself. If you're not taking care of yourself, everything else falls to the wayside. And that is, you get to a point where in life, and it sounds so cliche, we get to a point where you've seen everything that's really going to happen, right? You've seen things are only going to happen in these kind of ways, innit? And after a while, you've then got to start checking your own behaviour and the way you deal with things and the way you carry on in it. So like, and how you're contributing to these things. So if you're allowing yourself to feel, run down, or if you're in a, I don't know, if you're in a shitty relationship or whatever, if your mental health is not where it needs to be and you're not, because it's not just about being mentally strong in it, because it's naive to think, oh, well, the reason you're down or whatever, or the reason you're struggling mentally is because you don't have that mental fortitude. It's naive, it's bullshit. We all have difficulties, but like what I've learned is that not everyone is prepared to face those difficulties and talk about them in a way that's pragmatic, in a way that's practical, in a way that's helpful. Understand? So mental health is everything. I've also learned that emotional maturity is also pretty important. And because I think without that, that's why it's brushed to the wayside, being able to discuss these topics, innit? Because I can never have a person sit down and look me in the face and be, you're not being real with yourself if you're too proud to admit that you're. And I get that it's a generational thing, and I think very much I'm benefiting from my generation as millennials, as I've learned very recently. I'm a millennial.
I didn't see it, but
yeah. Well, this is up till 35. I've been told.
Wow, okay.
That we're just more progressive about these things. Whereas I think maybe in generations gone past, it was kind of stiff upper lip kind of thing. You don't really talk about these things. So mental health is everything, because it informed absolutely everything. And it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one because people that, it's only when you talk, and I love having these conversations. I love having these conversations because it's only when you talk to people. I've in the last 6 months alone, I've been having so many conversations with people that I thought had their shit together. Like don't ever seem phased. But then when you peel back the layers, and there's just so much stuff. Like I said, I've got a friend that has been one of my best friends, has been going through some shit, man, and just it rattled me because like I've been in some places, I felt like I've been stood still while everyone else is doing what they're doing, but I've never really entertained those kind of thoughts, and it's just it's scary that you're that it can have such an effect on you. I'm an advocate of positive mental health and being proactive about it. I can't stress that enough. I think it's so important, so important, and I think it's so important to talk, so important to talk, and I think you should never ever feel in any way about them kind of things.
And to somebody you feel safe with.
Because it's we all need that support. We all need that support. So you should never feel away like about talking to anyone, and even if it's because sometimes it's like I've never really been like a advice person. Like I don't have the answers for you. But like I will always listen. And I suppose growing up, like that was always what I can do in it. Like I don't know what to say to you in it, like necessarily. I don't know how to advise you necessarily. Like that's changed as I've gotten older and experienced life. But like I'll always listen, and sometimes that's all you need to give a person in it. It's just that ear, like space to kind of vent it, say it, and just kind of work through it and process those things. So yeah, can't stress it enough. It's everything.
How do you safeguard yourself from bad mental health?
By being proactive, man.
Because you said about the talking to people. Other than that, what do you do? What do you do?
What do I do? I box.